How's it going, Thieves fans? Today we are going to be talking about how the Thieves did at Champs. Now, I want to start off by saying congratulations to Optic and the Green Wall. More specifically, I want to give a huge shout out to Kenny because, as we all know, he's an old friend of ours, and this guy deserves it, man. He really works hard, and with how many champs he's been to, you would think he would have more than one ring by now. It was very big for him to get that second ring. And, like I said, much deserved for him. But we're not here to talk about Optic. We are here to talk about the LA Thieves. The Thieves actually had a really good showing at Champs. And based on how the Thieves had played earlier in the year, I think a lot of us can say, honestly, that we did not think that the Thieves would finish where they ended up finishing at Champs. And that's a huge accomplishment. They finished top 4. And even though there were some moments that I felt the Thieves probably could have won, different matchups that would have led us to be top 3, if not even make it to top 2, they played great. They had a great weekend, and, they showed so much improvement throughout the year. So, a ton of credit to them and the coaching staff as well for, helping this team kind of reach their, I don't want to say potential because I don't think they're all the way there yet, but to reach where they were able to reach so far this year. As I said before, we will kind of talk about kind of how everything will go after Champs, because I really don't see any roster moves happening, at least through now to the EWC, which we can talk about at the end of this episode. But we can go ahead and jump into the first series that the Thieves had to start off the weekend, which was against Toronto Ultra. And, Toronto has been a top 4 team all year. They won a tournament. This was a very nerve-wracking team to face off against in winners round 1, especially if you're the Thieves, because the Thieves up until now had not really won anything against a top 4 team, especially on LAN. And we knew going into it that this was our very, very first matchup. A little nerve-wracking to say the least. But as you can see from the overview, the Thieves actually ended up winning this one 3-1. And they looked really good doing it. As I said, the Thieves looked good all weekend. But they came out hot. They came out firing. It really shocked me. And I'm sure it shocked a lot of, other Thieves fans. And it even shocked some of the casters as well. Because throughout the year, the Thieves have not had great respawns, specifically hardpoints. The control has been up and down throughout the year, but hardpoint was definitely the one that the Thieves really struggled with basically all season. And Toronto was kind of on the opposite side of that. They were really good at respawns. They're really good at hardpoints. So for this series, I think everybody was kind of expecting the Thieves to have to Neslo the series and take maps 2, 3, and 5. The upside was that both Toronto and the Thieves are basically good at the same maps. And so the Thieves, in some regard, were getting their best maps. And at that point, it kind of just came down to who was going to play better on those maps. And for this series, the Thieves were the ones to take it. And like I said, they looked really good doing it. From this overview here, you can see that everybody on the Thieves was negative, but not like bad negative. Ghosty was the only one positive with plus 18. The guy had a crazy event. He definitely deserves his flowers. I don't know how all the contract stuff works, but Ghosty is one that definitely deserves whatever he's going to get in the offseason. Hopefully it's the Thieves giving whatever it is to him. I would not want to see him leave the Thieves, but that's a story for another time. Either way, Ghosty had an insane event. As I said, the Thieves, everybody besides him were in the negative, but they were all really close. Whereas on the side of Ultra, Kleenex had a really, really rough series, and typically that's not what you see from him. He's normally the guy, at least the sub, that has been playing more consistent and been at that higher level. It's been kind of him and Scrap throughout the year that have kept everything pretty consistent. Envoy and Insight were the ones who have kind of fluctuated a little bit throughout the year. And, on this one, yes, Envoy was -2, but, again, very minor negative stats. So he did a really good job. And then Insight, you can see +9 and Scrap +4. But let's get into map 1. Um, in this map 1, we had a 6-star, which, as I said before, kind of all of these maps are maps that the Thieves have been good at as of late. And as you can see, the Thieves won it 250 to 184. This was a great map for both Ghosty and Kremp. I mean, they both dropped 30, or 30 plus, I should say, and really just kind of pushed the pace to start the map. We kept it close through the first 5 hard points, trailed off a little bit from the 6th and the 7th hard point, but then we really kind of locked it in. And from the 8th hard point all the way to the final hard point, the Thieves just kind of pushed the pace and were able to take complete control. I want to say it was P4 on the second rotation where the Thieves really kind of brought everything together. They were able to get to the rotation first, if I'm not mistaken. And at that point, they basically just prevented Ultra from even getting close to the point, locked it down for just about a full 60 seconds. And that was kind of what brought them back into the game. As we said, they fought the whole time through the first rotation, but then after that, they kind of trailed off a little bit until that P4 came back around. And that was where they really locked it down and were able to take the lead and end up taking the map. Joe Deceives and Nasty also not bad maps from them. Joe was -3, Nasty -2. But to me, that just shows that their teamwork was really on point. They were all playing really well because -3, -2 is not that bad. They were all doing solid damage. Joe Deceives was the lowest with only 4K. Everybody else was at 5K, if not above. So he was the only one who maybe had a little bit less damage, but I don't think that's really too much of a big deal. And then from the side of Toronto, again, Kleenex did not have a very good map 1. I think that did kind of help the Thieves when it came to maybe momentum in some of these respawns, because they knew after this 6-star that, they already won the first hard point. Who's to say they can't win another one? Envoy -7, Insight was the only one positive with +11, and Scrap was -8. So the first map, great start for the Thieves. It definitely got me amped up while I was watching it. But map 2 is where things kind of didn't go our way. We don't have to talk too much on it because there's really not too much to talk about. The Thieves kind of got slammed. It was a 6-0 on Rio Search, which was very surprising and definitely in the moment very nerve-wracking because this has been our bread and butter for the last however many weeks. The Thieves have looked really, really good on Rio. That has been their go-to search and destroy map, and they just got smoked by Ultra, who we thought were going to smoke us on the respawns, and we were going to take the searches. So when that happened, it was I feel like there was a lot of pressure to say, hey, now we got to win the control because we cannot take this. We can't risk taking this to a game 5 now. We just got smoked on search. Like, we don't want to do that again. Obviously, it would have been a different map, but still not a great look. Everybody on the Thieves was negative. Just really not great. Kremp ended up dropping a donut. I think Octane ended up tweeting out that, he thought because he was gone that the Thieves were done with donuts. But I think Kremp was just, kind of giving his props to Octane here in this map. But we move on to the invasion control where, man, this one, even though it was a 3-1 victory on the side of the Thieves, it was very, very nerve-wracking. There were so many back and forth situations, even points where the Thieves were barely scraping by. But the main thing, they iced up and they were able to close it down. Ghosty was only -1 on this one. Joe Deceives was +4, had a really solid map. Nasty broke even, and Kremp was only -3. And if I'm not mistaken, there were a couple plays where Kremp actually made, some big plays. Joe Deceives had a huge play on, I believe it was the first round, maybe? Either way, Ultra had control of the point, and they were making it really, really risky, and Joe Deceives was able to hop on, kind of just delay the time, allow himself to kind of re-heal while stopping the clock, and allowing whoever was left on the Thieves that was alive to get back over to the point to help him out and get the kill on the point to secure the round. And then at the very end, we can show this one because I know I know what happened here. This one, it was getting real close again, getting real nerve wracking. Ultra, as you can see, Envoy's in a great spot. They get 2 dead. He gets onto the point, and now at this point, there's nobody really around. They just have to kind of watch their cross and hope nobody gets through. And unfortunately, we don't win the trade battle, so they're able to get across and get onto the A point where they start getting pretty good progression. And we only have 26 seconds. We have 5 lives. Really not looking ideal. But Kremp and Nasty get two big kills. And from here, the Thieves are able to get the guys off of A, and they're just kind of holding on to it. But you'll see here in a second, there's a crazy wave of kills that happens that makes this whole thing really, really scary. Somehow Ghosty, though, I mean, look at this. He just completely ices up. He's able to get 3 kills at the end. Those 2, both guys were just running at him. They had to sprint. He made a very, very smart play in getting the first guy weak, killing the second guy who was more of the threat to him, and then being able to finish the second kill, all because he knew the guy had to sprint onto the point. So that's what ended up closing out this invasion control for us and moving us on to the Rio hardpoint. Now, this one was a lot closer than what the first hardpoint was. The Thieves did take it 250 to 236, and Ghosty was the only guy positive on the Thieves side of things. And as you can see from the game flow, the Thieves were down basically the entire time. They were really just kind of like keeping the train going, like trying to stay alive, just trying to keep pushing and keep fighting. And, because of that, they were able to stay in the game until they got to the 4th hill on the second rotation, where they were able to finally get in front. And from there, they held that basically all the way until the end. So they made some very, very big plays. I don't know if it was this map, but I know there was one where Joe had a crazy 3-piece, but either way, they just looked so good on this one. As we said, they started off, they were down like 100 points, I think, and they were able to ice up and just build their way back into this, and ended up taking it. I wouldn't say convincingly, but based on how they started to play, they looked really good. I believe they did a listen in on Rio as well, and they sounded so calm compared to what we've heard from before. I know the Thieves were very kind of jittery and scattered before that, but they dialed in, man. Like that was something that they must have worked on throughout this year, because they sounded great. They sounded super calm, very collected, and I think that's kind of what helped them get back into that map and end up winning the map, winning the series. Obviously, when the Thieves won, the boys stood up. They were roaring. They were letting Scrap hear it, because obviously Scrap talks a lot, man. He talks a lot, and the Thieves had to let him know. I mean, we were not the favorites to win this series, but we did it. We dropped Ultra down to the lower bracket, and from there we had Optic, who we will talk about next. Jacoby, what a tournament from the boys. Yeah, for real, man. This was a insane tournament. As I said, I know like they didn't finish maybe where, like, based on how they started playing, where I felt like they could have, but I mean, before the series or before the tournament started, if you would have told me that they were going to place top 4, I probably would have been like, well, maybe, but it's a rough path. Like, the odds are definitely not in our favor, but they played a great tournament, and it makes me really excited for EWC, which we will talk about down the line. Are you going to discuss the idea of team change after EWC? I can. I just don't know like how much. Like I don't know some of like the whole free agent and like contract kind of stuff. So for me, it would kind of all just be speculation, and I don't have like anything specific that I feel like would be likely to happen. It would all just kind of be thoughts and ideas of, maybe this is a possibility, maybe it's not. I do feel like after EWC, there's probably a good chance that most teams make changes. I mean, Optic is probably the only one who won't. You could argue that FaZe and um, Ultra in New York maybe won't, but I feel like based on kind of how things played out at Champs, that there's a possibility that every team basically besides Optic makes a change. And I think the reason the Thieves would make a change is if they can upgrade a specific position. Now, obviously, I don't know who that would be. I don't know who I would want that to be because I feel like everybody has kind of, played their part in different ways. And at times, every player, for the most part, besides Ghosty, has been a little inconsistent. So I don't know who would be the person that they would kind of change around. It could kind of depend on play styles and who's available. So it really is just a lot of, I don't know, kind of like whoever's available. I think that would be kind of the biggest thing. Because I don't just want to like throw out random stuff and say like, oh yeah, we could get this guy and this guy and this guy, like when that's just not very likely. So that's kind of my only thing with roster mania. But I get what you're saying. Outside of Dan, Joe probably has the best shot to stay. Yeah, I feel like based on this champs tournament, I think outside of Dan, Joe had the best overall performance. Um, and obviously they're all really young, but Joe's the youngest, and he was playing like that. And as we talked about with the series against Ultra, how I mentioned this invasion, there was that one point where he was able to get on the point and not just chow immediately, which is something that I feel like he would have done before. But I felt like he made a really, really smart play. And that is something that I feel like he has grown on and grown on it rapidly. Like I said, at the start of the season, I don't think that's the type of play that he would have made. But knowing that he can't really do that or that's not the right play and being able to hold back, especially during champs, was really big. A ton of props to him. As I said, he had a great tournament overall. But yeah, let's get into this Thieves and Texas matchup where, man, this one was a heartbreaker because as you can see, the Thieves started off 2-0 against Optic. And as we know, Optic was the team to go on and win the entire thing. The Thieves were one map away from closing out the series and being one of the teams to move on to winners final, where they would have ended up facing New York. And this one really stings, especially when you go back and you kind of like rewatch some of the VOD and stuff, because you know how close the Thieves were to being able to move on to winners final and being granted a guaranteed top three. And they started off really, really good on this Karachi hardpoint, which in my mind, I was a little nervous for because I feel like we've played a little better at Karachi recently, but I feel like overall throughout the year, it hasn't been our best hardpoint map, and there have been kind of ups and downs on it. And, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. But the Thieves kind of proved me wrong, and they came out firing. Ghosty was -8, which, we really haven't seen often where Ghosty is kind of the guy who's lacking a little bit. But Nasty, Kremp, and Joe, they all did their thing to help get this team to win 250 to 177. As we could see, Joe was +3, Kremp was +6, and Nasty was +3. Like, Joe and Kremp were moving. They were like nonstop active, and they were getting in crazy spots to where they were getting a couple 2 pieces, 3 pieces maybe. Like, they just were pushing the pace really well, really early, and Optic didn't really get used to that. As you can see, Pred's the only one positive with +12. Everybody else is in the negative. Dashy was -7, Kenny -6, and Shotzi -3. The Thieves just looked really good. And with how they kind of pushed through this map, going into High Rise Search and Destroy, I knew that was one of the Thieves' better search and destroy maps. Yes, we hadn't really played it as much like in matches, I feel like, but they ended up showing up and doing really well in the high rise as well. Obviously, it was close with a 6-5 stat line, but everybody on the Thieves was positive besides Joe, who was -1, and typically he's the bomb carrier. So, the bomb carrier is the guy who is normally going to have not as good of, KD, but he was only -1. Both Ghosty and Kremp were 10 and 8, and they looked solid. I don't think, yeah, we were pretty even on opening duels, but the boys just they kept to it. They kept fighting. I kind of blocked out this this match because the them falling against Optic was it hurt knowing that we were one map away. So I feel like a lot of Thieves fans blocked it out. But they looked solid the whole time. They battled back and forth, and the fact that they were able to take it to around 11 and still end up closing it out, to me was really big. I felt like once they did that, that brought me a little more confidence in the idea if we go to the Karachi search that maybe we'll be all right. Obviously, too, just the fact that we won the search and destroy put us up 2-0. At that point, we have 3 maps to spare. Well, 2 maps to spare, basically. And I thought we had a good opportunity. Now, going into this Karachi control, I didn't love the Karachi control just because we really haven't seen the Thieves play Karachi that much, especially as of late. They've played a lot more invasion, and they were really good at high rise. So I think that's why we didn't see any high rise control for them this tournament. I think a lot of teams just kind of auto vetoed it against them, and we did not look very good on this. We got stomped, and I think this was kind of where things started to go downhill for the Thieves. It would have been one thing if the Thieves kind of kept it competitive, but I think with the 3-0 stomping, everybody negative on the Thieves besides Ghosty. Kremp just had a really, really bad map, 6 and 20, just not ideal, especially not in this position of the series. I think this, like I said, this is where the ball got rolling for Optic. Obviously, this was a home event for them, and I think the crowd really just got into it, and the Thieves really needed to not let them get into it, because at that point, even if they lose the Karachi, but say it's 3-1, 3-2, I think there's a world where going into the 6-star, they still have a little bit of momentum and they're able to, play a little better. But once they lost 3-0, and it was a swift 3-0, it was kind of downhill from there. 6-star, as we said before, the Thieves were looking good on it, but this is also one of Optic's best hardpoint maps, and they came out hot on this one. Dashy was the only one negative with -2, which really isn't that bad. Ghosty was the only one positive for the Thieves with +1. And, our subs just weren't pushing the pace the same way that they did in the 6-star against Toronto. And, not to blame them at all, but, we started to get to the point where the Thieves were getting 2-piece or 3-piece and not getting trades. And that has been a very big recipe for disaster for the Thieves. Like, every time they get to that point where it starts to happen, it kind of just snowballs, and they're never really able to get back into it. Obviously, there's going to be times throughout matches and throughout series where players and teams get 2-piece, 3-piece, whatever. But if you can't come back from that and have moments like later in the map where maybe you're kind of able to fight back into it, then you're kind of just destined for failure at that point. And I think that's where the Thieves got in this hard point, where it was just like they weren't getting their trades, and Optic was just kind of able to run away with it. They kept it close the whole time, but it was around, I want to say, this 6th hard point where Optic started getting a lot of those multi-kills, and the Thieves weren't able to trade it. And that's why you see this big jump from basically the 7th hard point up to the 8th and so on. At that point, the Thieves just weren't really able to get back into it. And that's when I got really, really nervous, knowing that Karachi has not really been one of our S&D maps. Not something that we play very often. And the last couple times we have played it, we haven't looked great. So Optic had all the momentum at that point, and we're going into a search and destroy that we don't typically play. Now, Ghosty again +1, Nasty was +2, but both Joe Deceives and Kremp were -4. And everybody on Optic was positive besides Pred. And, again, on this map specifically, Optic just came out hot. They came out, they got a first blood real quick. Shotzzy got a 2-piece. And, again, the crowd was into it at that point. It almost felt like it was too little too late kind of thing. But the Thieves fought really hard. And that's why I think based on how they played on this series, I really do think that they have a good shot at, the EWC, which we will talk about later. But Joe, I think, even said himself that after this series, they kind of realized that, hey, maybe we let off the gas pedal a little bit. We got a little bit too confident going into that Karachi control. And that's, like I said, kind of where things started to spiral for them. Flying high. Should have rolled the dice with the invasion control. I guess that's hindsight. Plus Shotzzy went triple positive at one point on invasion control against us this year. Yeah, I mean, that was something that JCap talked about was, you kind of got to stick to what you're confident with. And Karachi was the map they've been confident with. He said they were looking good on it in scrims. And obviously that's something that we haven't gotten to see. But from a fan's perspective, when we saw how they played Invasion, I think it's very easy for us to say, oh, well, we should have played Invasion. We obviously looked good on it, or better, I guess, against Ultra than we did on Karachi against Optic. So, there's different ways to look at it, but, we'll get into this Heretics match, but, we played Karachi on this one and we threw out Heretics. Obviously, Heretics is not Optic. They're, they're on a different level for sure. But the Thieves looked really, really good on Karachi against the Heretics. So it really could have just been, as I said, how Joe mentioned that they kind of just let their foot off the gas pedal a little bit. They thought they had already won the match, basically, because they went up 2-0. And that, that's kind of what bit them in the butt. Brett Price. I just don't understand why you give Optic their best control map, especially when you hardly play it. Again, I think it was just one of those where, based on their scrims, they're confident in it in their scrims. And yes, we don't see it, but if they're confident in scrims, we don't know who they're necessarily playing. There could have been times that they faced off against these high-level teams on Karachi and figured, hey, we've been smoking these guys on it. Who's to say we can't do it against Optic either? More than likely, LAT felt confident on it. A lot of people saying that LAT were looking absolutely gross in scrims. Yeah, exactly. I know that these were a top 3 team in scrims leading into champs. I just don't see why you give a top 4 team their best control map in swing mode. I mean, I do kind of agree with that. I do think if it is their best map, I feel like you should kind of go with something else. But if it's your best map too, you kind of got to do that. Because if you think about it, going back to the Ultra Series, all of these maps are Toronto's best maps. Like, seriously, they're all Toronto's best maps. That's why we got them, because they're our best maps as well. And in this situation, it worked out in our favor. Like, if we lose these maps, I'm sure people would be saying the same thing as with the Karachi against Optic, So I think it's one of those where Optic just played us better on it. Like, and, maybe now going into EWC, if the Thieves end up facing Optic there, maybe we say, hey, we're not messing with Karachi. Like, we are not playing Karachi against Optic. If they look godlike at Karachi controlling scrims, but Krem can buy one, you're gonna have a bad map regardless of best or worst map pick. Yeah, exactly. It really is kind of just unfortunate that Krem happened to have probably his worst map. Actually, not probably, his worst map at the tournament in that Karachi control. Just really bad timing, really. You don't think Karachi is Optic's best control map either, just because it is a lot harder for Shotzzy to do his stuff. I almost feel like, I don't know if I'd say that it's not their best map because of that, because I almost think that type of map does fit what Shotzzy does better. Like there's so many kind of like close corners and tight angles and a lot of like parkourable stuff that he can just fly around the map on and get lost really quick. So I think in some regard that does play to their favor. Obviously with control it's a little different than hardpoint, but I do feel like that is kind of a map that allows Shotzi to be the best version of him, if that makes sense. All right, let's dive into this match against the Miami Heretics. This one was a lot more in our favor. We had Vista as our first hard point, and with how we've kind of played on Vista, I wasn't sure how this would go. We've played some really good teams really well on Vista. Maybe we haven't been winning all of them, but we've been keeping pretty much all of them somewhat competitive. And so I felt like this is still a good map for the Thieves. I wouldn't say super confident, definitely not as confident as like a 6-star, but I felt reasonably confident. And you know, the Thieves started off pretty good. They had, you know, some up and down moments towards the end. They started to pull away, as you can see, but they kept it close the whole time. They were all making some pretty big plays. Kremp had a really good map, as well as Ghosty. Both of them dropped 30 bombs. And Kremp was getting a ton of engagements, doing a lot of damage. He ended up getting a cruise, and that really helped us towards the end of the map where, you know, there were a couple moments where the Heretics would kind of break in and keep things close. But once Kremp was able to get that streak and we got back to what, P4, I want to say, P4 or P5, that's where Kremp was able to use his streak and get us back into the point. Ghosty started making some big plays at that point too. And from there, it was kind of just these last couple hard points where Miami was able to break in and just, you know, kind of be a pest more than anything. But the Thieves kept battling. They kept breaking back in. And I think that's kind of what allowed them to stay in front the whole time, was they just never let Miami get very comfortable. And, you know, Vickle had an insane map. I mean, dude was 1 kill away from 40. He was doing everything he could to try and make sure that the Thieves did not win this map. But it's going to be tough to do that when you have both Ghosty and Kremp dropping 30 bombs. And Nasty was only 1 kill away from a 30 bomb as well. Joe Deceives with the lowest KD at -7. But, you know, they all looked really good. Again, their comms were cool and collected. They sounded great. They were calling out a bunch of stuff. I want to say I saw a clip of Slasher talking about how Ghosty's comms are actually insanely good, because not only is he calling out where people are at, he's calling out where he thinks people are going to be, and he's doing it before he actually knows where they'll be at. And so he's giving comms to everybody else saying like, hey, you know, look out for this, look out for this. And more often than not, that's where they're at. Like he has everything on lock. It's like this guy is just a freaking human UAV, dude. Like he knows where everybody is. He knows everything that's going on, and he's helping lead the team because of that. So, you know, a ton of props to him for being able to kind of do all that stuff and lead the team in that regard. Map 2, we had Invasion Search and Destroy, where we ended up taking that one 6-3. And, you know, another really good map for Joe Deceives. 12-5, +7, 2.4 KD. Joe Deceives has looked really, really good on Search for the most part throughout this tournament. Kremp was the only one negative with -1. I don't know if he was the bomb carrier on this map or if it was still Joe or what. But, you know, they looked really good. Obviously never really letting Heretics get into this one, winning it 6-3. And yeah, I mean, pretty solid out of them. Metals was the only one positive with +2. Everybody else negative on the side of Miami. And we had majority of the First Bloods, 6-3. And, you know, I'm pretty sure we converted most of those, if not all of them. I don't really remember too much of the invasion control. It felt like it went by pretty quick, to be honest. So, you know, it was great to see them win another 2 right off the rip, especially after that match against Optic. This was obviously the next day, but when you go up, 2-0 against a team and then you get reverse swept, I'm sure coming into this next series, you're not necessarily going to be as confident as you were maybe the day before. But, they came out really solid, took the first map, and then took the second map pretty handedly to go on and finish the series on the third map, Karachi, which is where, as we said before, Optic was kind of able to start that reverse sweep. And they took this one really handedly as well. They came out and Ghosty decided, hey, we're not getting reverse swept again today. He dropped 28 and 10 with a 2.8 KD. Nasty with a 1.35 plus 6. And then our subs were only -4 and -2, whereas Miami was all in the negative, and we did not lose. We did not lose a round. We looked really good, really confident. Definitely a complete 180 from the day before on Karachi against Optic. As I said before, obviously Optic is on a completely different level than Miami, but they did a really good job to show how good they can actually be on Karachi. Okay, so back to the Karachi from Optic. We get sub-diffed on that map. I love Joe and Kremp, but a small map like that just allows Shotzi and Pred to shine. Yeah, I do think that's kind of the upside for that map is, players like Pred and Shotzi have the opportunity to kind of be the best versions of themselves. And I don't even think it's any like disrespect to Joe and Kremp. I mean, Shotzi and Pred are two of the best subs basically every year at this point. So it's not easy to kind of outpace those guys. Don't have all the stats on it. It could be 1,000% their best map. I just feel like Shotzi goes insane more on Invasion, which makes the job of the other three way easier. Yeah, I mean, because Invasion, especially on defense, like if they get a wave of kills, Shotzi's able to get into their spawn and just make things really, really difficult to get out. So I do kind of understand what you mean by that. Most people have been placing top 6 for this event. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people kind of expected them to not get as far as they did. I think with them, especially with them facing Ultra to start off the tournament, I definitely think that it was not likely that they would, get top 4. But they did a really good job getting there. And honestly, even when we talk about this second matchup against Ultra, there were many situations where I think the Thieves could have gone even farther than what they did. So yeah, the second matchup against Ultra, this was the same day as the match against the Miami Heretics. And, Ultra, obviously we knocked them down in the losers bracket. They themselves made a little bit of a run where we ended up meeting back up for top 3 in losers bracket. Now, at this point, knowing that the Thieves had already beat Ultra, I was confident in the fact that they could do it again. Now, obviously, the concerning thing is it's never easy to beat anybody more than once. Obviously, 2 times is a little different maybe than from like 3 or 4. But still, the idea that, you have to beat this team twice in the same tournament is a little nerve-wracking. They got basically all the same maps. Actually, I think it is all the same maps. It's just different placements of each map. I believe Invasion and Rio Search were flipped. And obviously the Thieves had already beat them on those same maps, and they beat them 3-1. So I felt like there was a really good opportunity here where having Invasion instead of Rio here gave the Thieves a better chance because they would probably play Invasion against Ultra better than they did the Rio. That's what I was hoping. Obviously, it didn't quite pan out that way, but we did start off solid in the 6-star hardpoint where we took that one 250 to 213, and Envoy was the only one positive for them going plus 13. He was doing everything he could to make sure that the Thieves did not win this map. And Kremp was the only one positive for the Thieves with plus 8. He went 33 and 25, made some really big plays, especially at the end here because the Thieves were down the entire map. And kind of what happened was we got to the P3 on the third rotation, and Kremp was able to break in basically at the start of the point. We did not have control. Ultra was the one who had control, but the Thieves were able to go over. Kremp popped a really big two-piece to break into the point, and then from there, Ultra was not able to get back in. One thing that I give the Thieves a ton of credit for is that P3, they somehow are able to break in almost every single time. It didn't matter who they played this weekend. It seemed like they were breaking into P3 almost every single time if they didn't have it locked down already, which is kind of interesting because I feel like it's not an easy hard point to break. And a lot of times they were doing it without having the spawn in the back. So they were just breaking from the front of the hill. And they did that this go around. That's what took them from this 205 to 249 mark. Basically got a full 60 on it. And then they ended up going to the P4 where they won a couple kills on the rotation. They only had to get 1 point. That's how they ended up winning that map. But yeah, it was a little bit of a comeback. Obviously not as big as the Rio hardpoint from the last time the Thieves played them, but it was still a pretty good comeback. They were not leading for most of the map, and then were able to just really ice up and lock down when they needed to get us that first map. Map 2, again, it did not turn out as well as we kind of thought it would, or is what I hoped it would, I should say. We got smoked again, but this time the Thieves did get one round. They really just didn't look super great. I feel like the teamwork was not quite there. And on top of that, Kleenex had a legacy map, going plus 10 with a 4.3 KD, 13 and 3. I mean, the Thieves just couldn't kill him. He was able to kind of do whatever he wanted on the map. And then, everybody else besides Envoy was positive as well. They got majority of the first bloods, and the Thieves just weren't really able to do too much with it, and never got back into it either. So this map 3, we go into Invasion Control, which last time we were able to beat them 3-1. Obviously, as I said before, it was very close in that last series, but I figured, hey, we've done it before. Who's to say we can't do it again? And, it was close again pretty much this whole time. We won the first round, but then once Ultra was able to win their second round in a row, that's when things got a little nerve-wracking because they won their offense. And, basically anytime you win an offense on Invasion Control, you're kind of set up for success. And that I think that's exactly what happened. Scrap went really big, going 32 and 22 plus 10, 1.45 KD, and Kleenex had a solid map as well, going 26 and 20, Envoy 28 and 21. So they just looked good all around. The Thieves again just didn't look as cohesive as maybe you would have hoped, because even this first round win was very, very close. Ultra was battling the whole time, and the Thieves barely kind of scraped away with this first round win, and then went on to lose the next 3. So just not ideal. And at this point, that's when things got a little unsettling here, because at this point Toronto just has to win one map. They've won 2 in a row. Obviously we won the Rio hardpoint last time, but we had to come back to do it, and the Thieves were able to do it again. We come into this Rio, we take it 250 to 186, and the Thieves looked solid on this one as well. They had control pretty much the entire map. Joe Deceives was the only one negative with -1. Ghosty had a really good map, again, trying to, will this team to make sure we don't lose this series. 27 and 20. Kremp was +1 and Nasty was +2. They just played really, really good team Call of Duty. I want to say it was this series where there was a moment too where Joe had an insane 3-piece, like a 3-piece that he should not have gotten. I think it's this one right here. Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, this was disgusting, dude. Here comes Joe. 1, 2, and then how does he turn on this guy? Who is this? Insight. dude, Insight got world starred here. I seriously was at a loss for words on what Joe Deceives had just done to him. I mean, he pulled Insight's pants down, dude. Like, he got Insight lost. Um, that was insane. To me, that might have sparked a little bit of, a little bit of momentum, because I am sure Joe Deceives hit him with a dead as loud as you can possibly fathom. Um, but like I said, their teamwork just looked really good. And this was one of those series where they were actually the ones getting the multi kills instead of getting multi killed. And I think there were a couple of moments where Toronto did get a couple multi kills, but the Thieves never let it kind of compile like they did when they played Optic. And I think that's what really allowed them to, keep hold of the reins on this one and take this map 250 to 186. Now we got the Rio Search and Destroy. And this was our last map of the entire event. And, there were some big moments that played out here. I felt like going into this one, knowing that the Thieves had got skunked the last time they played Ultra on this map, I wasn't too sure how it would go. But my outlook on it was, because the Thieves got smoked on it last time, the good thing is now, at this point, really, Ultra doesn't have a lot of VOD to look at because they got smoked. Like, what is it they're going to look at from it? Whereas the Thieves were able to look at the VOD and say, hey, this is kind of how they played it. We might be able to counter all these ways. And I think in some regard, that's what happened. They made some changes. And on top of that, Joe Deceives had a crazy wallbang spot. He pulls it out, and I think he pulled it out in the first round. He might have pulled it out in the first round, but nothing really came of it. But this was the round where it worked out for him. You see Envoy's trying to get that bomb down. You got Joe Deceives down here on A. He picks him off through the wall. This wall right here next to bomb, he's shooting through it from A side. If you look at that mini map right there, he shoots across, picks him off, and Joe did this basically every defensive round. He made it really, really difficult for the Ultra to get the bomb down. And even when they did, a lot of times they were down in numbers at that point, which kind of helped the Thieves, get back into it. Now, the hard part was we got up to, this round right here where Nasty was in a 1v1 and he basically was just chasing Insight, trying to get the kill because there really wasn't much time. And it was going to be hard for him to, I believe, get the bomb and plant. And so Insight made a really smart play, just ran away. Nasty was not able to get the kill. We ended up losing that round. And I believe it was the next round where Kremp gets in a 1v1 with Envoy. And he gets Envoy super, super weak. Puts a ton of damage into him while Envoy's on the A-bomb. He's getting ready to plant it. There's really not much time left. He cooks a grenade, throws it at him. It hits Envoy. Envoy still doesn't die. And then Envoy challenges out, puts some shots into Kremp. So Kremp backs down, kind of just tries to run away. And then from that point, Envoy's able to plant the bomb. He's able to reposition. And then at that point, he ends up winning the round. Those were two very big rounds that if they just happen to go in our favor, we end up winning the series. I really do believe that. And, I'm sure both of those were kind of like confidence drainers for them. They just, they had really, really good opportunities and weren't able to convert on them. And that's where Toronto was able to just kind of take advantage, and they ended up going up 3-1 in that final round 11, or not round 11, round 10, my apologies. And, at that point, it was a nasty 1v3. He couldn't really do too much. And, they ended up sending the Thieves packing. It was really, really sad to see because, things could have turned out differently based on the way they played. They played great all weekend, and they played really good against Toronto Ultra both times. They played really good against Optic. They smoked Miami. Like, just everything seemed like this was the time for the Thieves to, make a really solid push. And they did. Getting top 4, fantastic for them. But it just felt like after this series, they very easily could have won and gone on to face New York. And even with the Optic series, they could have won that one to go on and face New York. But that's just not how things ended up playing out. Kind of sucks that it fell that way. But the Thieves placed top four, as we said. Not really where we thought the Thieves would place, but it works out, and it was their best placing all year. As I said, they probably could have gone farther than that, and that's what makes me really excited for EWC. Now we have, I want to say it's like 3 weeks until EWC starts, and I don't exactly know how the format is going to look for that, but I do know they have pool play. I don't know who exactly is confirmed to be there and what all of the confirmed rosters are, but I'm pretty sure today was the day that all the teams needed to be roster locked. So I don't really know how all that stuff will play out, but based on some of the stuff that I've seen from the kind of alleged pools, it looks like these have possibly the best pool to be in. They are in Pool D, according to this post that I saw. Again, this could be. Okay. I know it's blocking this, but this isn't as important here. Group A is supposed to be Optic Legion, Ravens, and Team Falcons. Group B is supposed to be Cloud9 is NYSL for anybody who doesn't know. Surge, G2 Esports is the Minnesota Rocker, and then Clutch Rain is the number 4 challenger spot. And then Group C is supposed to be Ultra FaZe. It says Surge, but I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be Boston Breach. And then Challenger 3 is FC Black or FaZe Black. And then Group D is what the Thieves would be in. 100 Thieves, Heretics, Lore Gaming, and Amit Brooklyn, which they are not in, from my understanding. From my understanding, three of their players got brought on to the Boston team, which left them basically without a team. And so they are getting filled in with, I think it's like Houston something. I can't think of their name. I don't pay too much attention to challengers, but they were like the next closest team. So I believe that's who is supposed to be filling in for them. But if this is actually how this plays out, the Thieves are in a really solid group because we've proven that we can beat Heretics. We smoked them in champs. And then obviously 2 challengers teams. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of these challengers teams that have made it to EWC are a lot of ex-pros that are teaming together. So they could be better than what we expect. But my thing is, challengers teams are kind of in challengers for a reason. And if the Thieves were able to do what they did against teams like Optic, Ultra, to me, those teams are all better than these challengers teams. Now, maybe we'll see otherwise when we get to this tournament, but I feel like for me, I would much rather be in this Group D than be in this Group C with Ultra and FaZe. That's just me personally, because Ultra and FaZe have been really, really good all year. They have superstars on their team. So to me, I favor this Group D way more than being in one of the other ones. So I will take that personally. But I don't know how it'll work after the pool play. I believe it's only a 3 to 5 day event. I don't know for sure. But like I said, we have a couple weeks before this happens. And, again, based on how the Thieves played at champs, I really do think that with, a couple things worked out going into EWC, I think if they can get their search kind of back up to par and keep their hard point where it was at champs, I mean, they're gonna look really, really scary against some of these teams because, I mean, they probably had the best overall hard point, maybe besides Optic, at this champs. Like they went from not being great at hardpoint to coming into champs and being one of, if not the best hardpoint team there. Their search and destroy took a little bit of a hit, But I think if they can kind of get back to where they were before, because they were a top 2 search and destroy team in the league, even when they weren't necessarily winning series, they were winning pretty much every search and destroy. So if they can kind of get that figured out again, we'll be in a really good spot. And then our control has looked kind of off and on. It seems like that's kind of a map based thing. So I don't know, man. I feel like this could be a scary event for the Thieves to face off in. And the really cool thing, in my opinion, is because the Thieves are playing under 100 Thieves instead of LA Thieves, they will get to wear the 100 Thieves jerseys, not LA Thieves jerseys, because the LA Thieves jerseys are kind of meh, in my opinion. But because they're 100 Thieves, they get to wear 100 Thieves jerseys, and we're speculating that they're going to get to wear the Thieves' new white and gold jerseys, which would be super, super cool, super fresh. And who knows? Maybe they get to wear these jerseys, the original ones that they did. Maybe it'll just be the white and gold. Who knows? But either way, that'll be super cool. But yeah, we have a little bit to go before EWC. We will obviously be paying attention to that. I will be tweeting that out. I'll be trying to make sure I'm on top of all that because I don't want to miss it. I don't want anybody else to miss it. And yeah, I mean, outside of that, there's really not much else to talk about when it comes to Champs Weekend. That's kind of how everything went. Again, another congratulations to Optic. Great event out of them. I definitely wish I could have gone to Champs, that's for sure. I missed out on not getting to go, but it was a little out of my price range at the moment, but that's all right. S&D really let us down this weekend. Yeah, I don't know if I'd say it let us down. I mean, obviously when you play two of the top 4 teams really close and you go to a game 5, you would hope to win the S&D, but I mean, against Optic, they won the first S&D. Against Miami, they won the S&D. It was, against Ultra that they didn't. And they didn't win the ones that, would have moved them on. So it definitely had an impact. I don't think they were horrible at S&D, but I definitely think they dropped off from where they were before. So that's why I was saying they definitely need to kind of make some adjustments on that front and hopefully get back to where they were before. Pool play is double a limb and bracket is single a limb. So basically you're saying what? If the Thieves lose twice in pool play, they're out? Is that what you mean? Or like, because I was thinking that the pool play would be this is how you get seeding, and then that puts you into the bracket. And then from the bracket, you would get double a limb if you're winner's bracket and single a limb if you're loser's bracket. That's what I was thinking. I don't know for sure because I don't know how the EWC set it up, but I think that's kind of what the CWL did before. This was for seeding, and then based on your seeding, you would be like winner's bracket. Well, I don't know. Because there's 16 teams. So, I don't know. We'll see. But most people talking about EWC were saying double limit pool play and single limit in the bracket, but I'm not 100% sure. Because the other thing that I would think would just be the teams that make it out are the teams with the best record in their groups. So, like if the Thieves, I would think the Thieves would play every single one of these teams. And if they win 3 games and they only lose 1 and say, everybody else loses two or more, then the Thieves are guaranteed to move on. If, say, Team Heretics and Lore both win 2 series and lose 2 series, then my guess is it probably goes down to map count. And then whoever did better when it comes to map count will probably get the higher seeding. And then the bottom 2 teams in, each group might get cut. And then from there, you would go into the bracket and it would be the top 8 teams, uh and then it's single elim from that point. That would be my other thought personally. I think the real question is what happens with these after EWC. Does Dan get poached? Do we snag a Booza? Do the FaZe trio split up? So this is kind of what I was saying earlier by I don't necessarily know kind of like how to speak on it because I really do think a lot of the roster moves are going to depend on the top 4 splitting up. Um, because say FaZe splits up. If FaZe splits up, are they going to try and take Dan? Because if they get rid of MC or Draza, there's a possibility that they want to pick up Dan. And then at that point, it becomes, okay, do the Thieves think that they can get somebody better than Dan? Or do they think, hey, we want to stick with Dan. Maybe we can get MC or Draza. That's an option. Then say New York. Say New York tries to make some changes. At that point, do the Thieves say, hey, maybe we try to go for Sib, or maybe we try to go for Hydra, or we try to go for somebody big? Or does New York say, hey, let's try and get Dan? Like, all that stuff kind of depends. I mean, personally, if I'm the Thieves, I do everything in my power to keep Dan because he's young. I think he's a great player to build around. I don't want to say necessarily has a ton of upside because I feel like he's already showing how good he really is. But because he's young, I still don't think he's reached his peak. So I guess you could say, he has a lot of upside still. And I just think you have a guy like Dan who I feel like is like fringe level superstar right now. Like you put him on a team with other, like superstar level talent, or even just let this team continue to mesh and continue to build to where each one of these guys kind of fills out their role. I think Dan will become a superstar. I really do. And so for me, if you have the ability to keep Ghosty, I think you do. Like 10 out of 10 times. But obviously that's not quite how things work. As you said, another team could come in and they could poach him, or, the Thieves just don't have enough money. They can't afford to keep him, or the Thieves say, hey, we want to find somebody else that, is going to take up more money that we would rather build around. I don't know. But for me personally, I hope we do everything in our power to keep Ghosty. I think Ghosty is the guy to build around right now. I love watching him play. I just think what the Thieves have done in the past with Kenny and Octane and how they had those guys as kind of like their foundational pieces. I just want the Thieves to do something like that. I don't want the Thieves to constantly be, playing musical chairs with different players and stuff like that. Obviously, I want to see the Thieves win, but I also want to see the Thieves have a core group or a core player that they keep. Obviously, before I was hoping it was going to be Kenny, but when we couldn't afford Kenny and we had to make some changes and we went into this year fully expecting a rebuild, I knew we should go for Ghosty. As long as Optic got rid of Ghosty, I knew the Thieves should have gone for him. And when they did, I was stoked because to me, he is like a great talent that has not fully been proven yet. I think now he is more so. And I think Joe is kind of getting to that point, especially after this champs. So I could see the Thieves trying to keep him and Joe. And again, this is all after EWC. But I think I would say if you can, and if based on what other teams do, I think if other teams don't make like super crazy changes or anything like that, I think it's actually smart to stick with the team that the Thieves have right now, especially if they do well at EWC, and to let them kind of continue to grow together, because that's kind of what Ultra has done with CleanX, Insight, and Scrap. They've kind of grown those guys from their system to where now they are, or at least for the last couple of years, I don't know if they still will be after this, they have been kind of the core group. Same with FaZe. Optic obviously now has Shotzi and Dashi. That's kind of like their core, so to speak. Um, and New York with Hydra, Kismet, and Skies. Um, I think if you can find guys who play well together and just kind of let that chemistry build, I think you have a really good chance of, you know, something good, something nice, because a lot of teams are going to make changes, and if you can find a group that can stick together and play well together, um, as long as you're playing well, that's the thing. As long as you're playing well, then I think it's smart to kind of keep the core roster. And so that's what I think. I think if there's not too many changes, if there's not a point where you feel like you can quote unquote upgrade, then I say you stick with the roster you have now and you run it back and you see how they do, because I mean they looked really good to close out the year, and they were just constantly improving throughout this season. So I think that's what I think you should do personally. Um, you think Dan would upgrade Ultra for Insight and New York for Skies? I think realistically, for just about every team that is in the top four, you could argue Ghosty would upgrade maybe besides Optic. And even that, I still feel like you could maybe argue depending on like who you're changing. Um, I don't necessarily think so, but I think definitely like New York Ultra Phase. I think if he goes to any of those teams, he will upgrade them. Um, I'm just hoping he doesn't go to any of those teams. I want to keep him on the Thieves. Um, but that's kind of my thoughts on um, the roster mania side of things. I really think it depends on how the top four teams play out, because like for me, I know people have mentioned Abuza, but um, I I I just don't know if I would want to take away from the chemistry that the Thieves have built to explore options with Abuza. Um, Obviously, he's a great player, but I just feel like you can get a bunch of talent, but just because you have a lot of talent on the roster, doesn't mean that you're going to be a really good roster. Um, there have been teams that on paper have insane talent, um, and don't perform to what you expect them to. And I just think that the Thieves current roster has started to mesh really well together. And like I said, it does kind of depend on EWC, because if they don't play well at EWC, or if they continue to be really inconsistent, then yeah, there's probably some changes that should be made, as long as they can can afford it. Because that's kind of the biggest thing is the money side of things as well. So um, yeah, that's my thoughts on it. But uh, depending on how EWC goes and depending on what teams make changes, I think the Thieves should kind of stick to where they're at, because they really did they look good to close out the year. So those are my thoughts. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for the episode today. It was a bit of a longer one, but we had 4 matches to cover, so kind of makes sense. And then obviously the EWC as well. But once the EWC rolls around, I will be doing more of these videos again, talking about the matches and kind of what to expect. And then between now and EWC, I might try and have a couple like different styled videos up on YouTube as well. So if I'm not live for a while, that's just because there's no matches and things like that. But be on the lookout for YouTube videos, because I'm gonna try and do that as well. I was gonna try and do Valorant content, but Valorant's done as well, so can't really focus too much on that. But yeah, I'm gonna get back to trying to do that, and then I will also be putting this up on YouTube, hopefully within the next like day or two as well. Uh, but yeah, if you are watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button, and be sure to check out some of the other videos I've done as well, whether it be the interview with Ghosty or the interview with Crimp. I'm hoping to possibly do that again after Champs, since you know, all that stuff is done, we can maybe get some different types of questions flowing, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's going to do it today. As I said, please hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.